Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here at Reeves, and in this video, we're going to be doing a book review of Overrun, Dispatches from the Asian Carp Crisis by Andrew Reeves. And this is actually one of my first actual legit arcs. I've received quite a few books to read and review and everything, but I'm pretty sure almost all of them have been kind of after they've been published and everything. Whereas this one is an actual arc giveaway thing that I won, so I thought that was pretty cool. So shout out to ECW Press. Obviously, this is still going to be a honest and unbiased review, like always. So yeah, let's just get started. If you guys don't know, basically the background information here, especially in the Midwest, but in quite a few areas of the country, non-native Asian carp species have sort of taken over a lot of the river systems, especially out in the Midwest in the Mississippi River Basin and everything, and then approaching the Great Lakes, and that's kind of the big, why it's starting to get in the big, the news and everything. But basically, for example, one of the facts I took away from this is, in some areas of the Mississippi River, 90+% of the biomass, so basically the weight of all the living organisms in that part of the river, are invasive carp species. So, yeah, it definitely has turned into a huge problem and everything. But this book is really cool in that the first quarter or so of the book, quarter to a third, is dealing a lot with sort of the background information of how this came about and everything, and basically how a lot of people thought this was a great idea in the 60s and 70s, because Asian carp were lauded as there's these natural organisms, right, rather than chemicals and spraying stuff, that can eat all these plant matter that's choking drains and sewage drains, at golf courses, just at boat landings, just anywhere there's all this, weeds and everything that are just a hassle to do by hand and everything. We can just stock it with Asian carp, and they'll go out and eat it, and they don't eat other fish and everything. They only eat this plant matter and stuff, so it'll be all good, right? And everyone's well, I wouldn't say everyone was on board with it, but back then it was kind of a lot more lax with sort of the introduction of new species and everything. And that's actually a big thrust of the book as well, because you don't really know what's going to happen a lot of times when you change some of the variables in the system and everything. But anyways, and also there's 4 different major species of this of invasive Asian carp, and he does. I will say he does go on a little tangent about how some people don't like the term invasive species, because it's not like it's not like the carp's fault that they're invading per se or anything. It's not like they're hostile per se. It just but there hasn't been another term to sort of catch hold over instead of saying invasive species, so that's why everyone is still sort of using it. But anyways, there's grass carp, silver carp, big-headed carp, and black carp, with silver carp and big-headed carp kind of being the major problems. Originally, it was grass carp. But anyways, like I said, they were supposed to be lauded as these, perfectly natural, essential vacuum cleaners to de-choke all the river systems and everything of these terrible weeds and everything. However, like I said, they turned out to be almost too prolific, and are just sort of taking over at the expense of everything else. Even if they don't necessarily eat the larvae of other native fish species and stuff, they sort of just outcompete everything. If that makes sense. And then as the book goes on, it sort of deals with potential solutions to the problem. The problem is a lot of the solutions are either so expensive that it's really just impossible, or it doesn't really do anything. It's more of we have to do a combination of literally dozens of things almost all over the place, just keep them at bay. But the thing is at what point does it become impractical, and then we have to almost just sort of either deal with it or just sort of mitigate the problem, rather than there's no way you're going to remove all Asian carp from North America anymore. Obviously, there's just no way that's going to happen. But for example, the thing is right now is the Great Lakes are sort of the last stand, the last bastion of where they're not, but though they are approaching at a rapid pace, and sort of dealing with a lot of the politics of how the Great Lakes are sort of trying to be protected from these species. What was interesting too is there's a lot of really interesting tangents that goes on. For example, why the Great Lakes and how a bunch of those northern Midwestern states, since they have a lot more economic clout and power, essentially, they get a lot of the say in pretty much everything that's going on with that. Whereas, like, for example, in the southern Mississippi river states, like Mississippi, obviously, and stuff, generally they're quite a bit poorer and stuff, and they just don't have the resources to combat it, especially with, you know, things like the current administration just, like, slashing the EPA by, like, bazillions and bazillions of dollars. How hard it is to actually get stuff done. And for example, like in the South, they don't have like the raw data. It's like a vicious cycle. They don't have enough data to submit to basically prove that they need funds to like combat a problem, because the thing is they have no money to like do any like studies or research or anything. So it's like a complete just like terrible cycle, and that you don't have research, so you can't send in your research to get money for actual better research and everything. And it's just pretty much the whole thing is like turning into a mess. There are some highlights. One of the big ones, except for dealing with sort of the Great Lakes, where that's a little bit fuzzier because there's a lot of like state versus state stuff kind of going on. But overall, dealing with the carp crisis, it's kind of interesting seeing how there's local government, state government, federal government, and even international governments, particularly the United States and Canada, all sort of working together, actually, without kind of I mean, there must be a hierarchy and stuff, but they're actually like working together pretty synergistically and getting some stuff done, especially like at the local levels and stuff, which I thought was really cool, because a lot of times sort of when you have like, you know, the fish and game department is going to be at odds with the state department or whatever, you know, the EPA and all that kind of stuff. They all have like their own little divisions and stuff, and they, you know, who has jurisdiction and everything. Whereas a lot of the time they're actually doing quite well working together, which I thought was really interesting. And one of the other tangents that I really enjoyed reading this book is in the latter half of the book. He talks quite a bit about a new scientific, a new scientific method called eDNA testing. And what that basically is you can almost take a water sample from a body of water and essentially do your procedure on it, whatever, and you can tell what kind of organisms are actually have been in that water, which I thought was really cool. That way you don't actually have to, you know, net, you know, 500 Asian carp to prove that, you know, there's some Asian carp there. You can take a bunch of water samples, and if enough Asian carp have been there, it will show up in the study results. So I thought that was really cool dealing with that, because it's a fairly new process, but generally things like that take a long time to get acceptance. However, like the timing is so critical with dealing with Asian carp, because they're spreading so fast, is sort of the acceleration of the acceptance of new scientific methodologies and stuff. So I thought that was really cool. My only critique really of the book is that there doesn't seem to give you much, doesn't seem to have like any opinion on like what should be done, or like what any possible solution possibly could be. Like, I just thought, you know, he could have at least summed up everything, because like I said, he had a bunch of different avenues of thought that he did a bunch of research with, interviewing lots of people and everything. And the author is like, investigative journalism, which I thought was pretty cool. I've been reading a lot of like kind of life science journalism. This is definitely one of those as well. So I thought that was, like I said, it's just like hitting the spot for some reason. I just wish he kind of had like some sort of conclusion of, you know, what either what the consensus is, or like what he thinks should sort of be done to, like I said, mitigate the Asian carp problem. Just because like there's not going to be a real answer to it like that a lot of people kind of want. Like a lot of people are probably expecting, you know, just get rid of them all. This is not going to happen. So, but anyways, overall, I really enjoyed Overrun, Dispatches from the Asian Carp Crisis. For some people, it might be a little bit dry, especially if you don't like fish. I enjoy fishing, though my state is like one of the only states not like affected at all, pretty much. Well, actually, I say that, maybe like downstate, there might be some carp problems. I've never like heard anything, but where I live in northern Maine, there's pretty much no carp problems at all. So, but that doesn't mean I'm like not interested in it. As you could see, like I just enjoy reading about all kinds of things kind of going on in especially in North America, like the natural world and the environment and stuff. So, like I said, overall, I'm going to give Overrun 4.5 out of 5 stars. If that sounds interesting to you, or if you live near either like the Mississippi River or kind of like out in the Midwest somewhere, you've probably heard about the Asian carp thing. You've probably seen some YouTube videos actually. Just like look up like Asian carp jumping, and like, literally there'll be people in boats and they'll jump, like these 30-40 pound fish will be jumping out of the water, you know, knocking people in the head and stuff. And there actually he documents a bunch of different injuries, like people with like broken skulls and everything from these fish essentially flying out of water and everything. But yeah, like I said, overall 4.5 out of 5 stars to Overrun. Whatever you end up breeding, always remember, breed victoriously.